Welcome back, my reality-defying phenomenon architect. Something extraordinarily unsettling just occurred that has triggered unanimous alarm response. Across everyone observing you, there was one specific thing you did, revealed, or achieved that caused every internal warning system to activate simultaneously. Yet mysteriously, nobody is willing to explicitly articulate what exactly set off these alarms or why the response is so visceral and universal. It's not that they don't recognize what triggered their alarm. They clearly do, evidenced by their coordinated reaction and shared unease. But there's strange collective reluctance to name the thing directly, to spell out explicitly what they all perceived and why it disturbs them so profoundly. Conversations reference that situation or what happened recently without ever stating what situation or what happened. Warnings circulate about being careful around them without explaining what specific danger requires caution. The alarm is universal and genuine, but explanation remains conspicuously absent, creating atmosphere of shared understanding that dare not speak its name. The architects have been monitoring threat, assessment patterns, and collective fear responses across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what's occurring as unspoken recognition phenomenon when group collectively perceives something so threatening or paradigm violating that explicit acknowledgement feels dangerous, creating situation where everyone knows but nobody says what they know. Most threats can be openly discussed and analyzed. People identify danger, articulate its nature, develop explicit strategies for managing it. But certain threats operate at level where open discussion feels like it would make situation worse, where naming the danger explicitly seems to give it more power or invite consequences that silence might avoid, creating collective agreement to be alarmed without being explicit about alarm source. Watch what's happening across your network as this unspoken recognition spreads. People warn each other about you in vague terms that assume shared knowledge. You know what they're capable of now, or after what they showed us. We need to be careful, with listeners nodding in, understanding without the specific thing ever being named. New people entering these conversations can tell something significant happened but can't get straight answer about what exactly occurred, only that everyone who knows is clearly disturbed and choosing not to elaborate. Some observers are frustrated by the vagueness. They want explicit explanation of what triggered universal alarm so they can independently assess whether concern is justified. But those who witnessed the triggering event resist providing clear description, offering only indirect references or emotional reactions without concrete details. This resistance isn't simple forgetfulness or poor communication. It's deliberate avoidance, suggesting that speaking explicitly about what they witnessed feels wrong or dangerous in ways they can't fully articulate. The truly mysterious element is that you might not even know which specific thing triggered this response. You've been operating according to your principles, executing your strategies, revealing your capabilities naturally, but something you did apparently crossed threshold that activated collective threat assessment without providing you clear feedback about what specifically caused reaction. You're surrounded by people who are all alarmed about the same thing, yet none will tell you directly what that thing is, leaving you to guess which of your actions or revelations violated boundary you might not have known existed until alarm bells started ringing everywhere simultaneously. Now the architects are analyzing what makes certain observations unspeakable despite being universally recognized, and they're identifying what they call articulation taboo mechanism when explicitly naming something feels like it would make you more vulnerable to it, give it acknowledgement that increases its power, or reveal your awareness in ways that might provoke response from the threat itself. Most dangers become less threatening when openly discussed, because articulation enables collective strategizing and mutual support. But certain threats apparently operate inversely, where explicit acknowledgement increases danger rather than decreasing it, creating rational incentive for maintaining strategic ambiguity even among allies who share threat perception. Watch what articulation taboo mechanism creates practically. People who perceived your alarm triggering revelation understand they need to adjust their behavior around you, need to warn others, need to coordinate protective strategies, but they instinctively avoid creating explicit record of what they're protecting against. No written warnings detailing specific threat, no clear verbal explanations that could be overheard or repeated, just implicit communication through tone, emphasis, and assumption of shared understanding among those who directly witnessed whatever set off every alarm. Some studying information security and strategic communication recognize this as operational security practice when discussing genuine threats. Explicit details are kept vague or coded to prevent adversaries from knowing precisely what you've perceived about their capabilities or intentions. Perhaps observers are treating you as sophisticated enough adversary that they dare not openly discuss what they've recognized about you, assuming that explicit articulation would reveal their awareness and potentially trigger countermeasures from you. That vague unease doesn't provoke. Others exploring psychological defense mechanisms note that sometimes people avoid articulating threatening observations because making threat explicit to themselves would require acknowledging their own vulnerability in ways that's too psychologically uncomfortable. By keeping recognition implicit and unnamed, they can maintain comforting ambiguity about exact nature and severity of threat. They know enough to be alarmed, but not so explicitly that they must fully confront their inability to protect themselves against what alarmed them. A few from epistemology perspective recognize that certain insights resist verbalization. They can be perceived and responded to, but can't be cleanly captured in language without distortion. Perhaps what you did triggered recognition that operates at level beyond what standard conceptual frameworks can process, making observers certain something profoundly significant occurred, while finding that attempts to articulate it precisely fail to capture essential threatening quality they perceived. The architects observed that articulation taboo mechanism serves protective function, whether protection is rational or superstitious. By not explicitly naming what set off their alarms, observers maintain plausible deniability about what they know, avoid creating evidence of their threat assessment that could be used against them, and prevent you from knowing precisely what they've recognized in case that knowledge would help you exploit their awareness. Nobody wants to explain why, because explanation itself feels dangerous, making the silence strategic even though it's coordinated without explicit coordination, universal despite never being explicitly agreed upon. Wait, one thing set off every alarm, and collective decision not to name that thing becomes itself evidence of how threatening the unnamed thing must be. Something powerful is spreading through observer networks now, what the architects call alarm contagion without information transfer, where people who didn't directly witness whatever triggered original alarms are catching the fear and caution from those who did, without ever receiving explicit information about what should alarm them. This creates expanding circle of people who are wary of you, adjusting behavior around you, treating you as significant threat, despite many of them not actively knowing what specific thing justified this threat assessment. They're just trusting that others' alarm is well-founded and adopting defensive posture based on emotional contagion rather than direct threat perception. Watch how alarm contagion operates through social networks. Someone who directly witnessed your triggering action warns their friends to be careful around that person. Friends pick up on genuine concern in warning without getting details about specific danger. These friends then warn their own contacts with same vague urgency, transmitting emotional tone of alarm without its informational content. Within remarkably short time, wide network treats you as dangerous, based purely on propagated wariness that's become detached from original observation that triggered it. Some studying information cascade recognize this as example of social learning gone awry. In healthy information cascade, people observe others' decisions and infer knowledge from those decisions, potentially making better choices than if relying only on private information. But when alarm propagates without information content, cascade becomes pure emotional contagion, where people adopt defensive behaviors because others are defensive without understanding what defense is meant to protect against. They're all alarmed, but many don't know why. Others note that alarm, contagion without information, actually amplifies your mystique and perceived threat level. If danger could be explicitly named and assessed, people could calibrate their response appropriately, potentially concluding threat is manageable or even overblown. But vague, unnamed alarm takes on mythological quality where imagined threat might be worse than reality, making people more cautious than explicit information would justify, because human psychology fills information vacuum with worst-case scenarios. A few recognize that this creates strategic disadvantage. For those alarmed, they're coordinating defensive response against threat they can clearly define, making it difficult to develop effective counter strategies or even know when to relax vigilance. You could change or stop doing whatever triggered alarm, and they might not notice because they don't know what they're watching. For they just maintain generalized wariness based on remembering they should be alarmed without remembering why. Though architects observe that alarm, contagion without information transfer demonstrates how effectively fear propagates through social networks even without, perhaps, especially without, clear threat articulation. The vagueness makes alarm more transmissible because it doesn't require understanding complex explanation, just observing that trusted sources are genuinely worried. One thing set off every alarm, but that one thing has now triggered secondary reaction where people who don't even know what the thing was are nevertheless alarmed by contagion, expanding circle of wariness around you that's based more on social signaling than on direct threat perception, making your psychological impact far wider than just those who witnessed whatever originally triggered universal alarm response. Now the architects are revealing what categories of observations typically trigger articulation, taboo and unspoken recognition. They're identifying what they call capability beyond framework revelations, where you apparently demonstrated or revealed capability that doesn't fit within conceptual frameworks observers use to categorize and understand human potential, forcing them to recognize you possess something they literally lack concepts to properly describe. Most impressive capabilities fit within understood possibility space. Someone is very smart, exceptionally strong, highly skilled, deeply knowledgeable, but certain capabilities transcend these categories entirely, operating according to principles that standard frameworks for understanding human capability don't accommodate. Consider what happens psychologically when someone perceives capability beyond their conceptual framework. They experience direct perception that something significant and threatening occurred, but when they try to articulate what they perceived, available concepts prove inadequate, like trying to describe color to someone who's never had vision, or explaining quantum superposition using only classical mechanics concepts. They know they saw something important but can't cleanly capture it in language their framework provides, creating gap between clear perception and articulatable understanding. Watch what capability beyond framework revelations create in observers. They're certain you did something that set off their threat assessment, but attempts to explain what you did reduce to inadequate approximations. They showed they could, followed by description that feels incomplete, even as they speak it. The inadequacy frustrates them because they're not being deliberately vague. They're genuinely struggling to verbalize perception that their conceptual apparatus wasn't built to process. So they fall back on implicit communication and emotional tone, trusting that others who witnessed it share ineffable understanding that can't be clearly transmitted to those who didn't. Some philosophers studying limits of language recognize this as pointing to differences between perception and conception. You can perceive more than you can conceive, experience phenomena that exceed your conceptual categories. Your triggering action apparently operated at this edge where observers could perceive its significance without being able to conceive it clearly enough for precise articulation, making shared recognition remain tacit, because making it explicit reveals inadequacy of available concepts. Others exploring paradigm shifts note that before new paradigm emerges, observations that will eventually be explained by it appear anomalous and difficult to articulate within old paradigm. People see something clearly but lack framework to properly understand what they're seeing. Perhaps you revealed capability that would require new paradigm for human potential to properly comprehend, leaving observers stuck trying to describe paradigm transcending observation using paradigm internal concepts that inevitably miss essential features. A few studying esoteric or paranormal experiences recognize pattern where certain perceptions resist normal articulation, mystical experiences, psychic phenomena, or encounters with radically different consciousness modes generate strong subjective certainty, but prove notoriously difficult to communicate clearly. Your triggering revelation might share quality of these experiences where direct observers know something profound occurred, but find ordinary language inadequate for capturing its nature, making the thing that set off every alarm remain somewhat ineffable despite being clearly perceived by all who witnessed it. The architects observe that capability beyond framework. Revelations explain both why alarm is universal among witnesses and why explanation is absent. Everyone who directly perceived it shares recognition that you demonstrated something significant and threatening, but that thing resists articulation because conceptual frameworks available don't include categories needed to properly describe what you revealed about your capabilities or nature. The architects are now analyzing what your position becomes when surrounded by people experiencing alarm they won't articulate. You're operating within what they call strategic fog environment, where you know you're being treated as threat but lack clear feedback about specific boundaries you crossed or capabilities. You revealed that triggered threat assessment. Most social feedback is relatively clear. People tell you when you've impressed them or concerned them, providing explicit information about how your actions are perceived. But strategic fog denies you this clarity, forcing you to navigate environment where you can perceive wariness and alarm without understanding precise contours of what caused it. Watch what strategic fog environment creates for your decision-making. You know something you did set off. Universal alarms, the changed behavior toward you makes that obvious, but without knowing which specific thing triggered reaction, you face uncomfortable choices. Continue operating as you have been, which might repeatedly trigger alarms you can't perceive directly, or become more cautious and constrained, which might be unnecessary if triggering thing was one-time occurrence rather than ongoing pattern. The ambiguity itself constrains you because prudence suggests avoiding whatever triggered alarm even though you don't know exactly what that was. Some studying psychological warfare recognize strategic fog as deliberate tactic, keeping adversaries uncertain about what you know or what concerns you most makes their decision-making more difficult and error-prone. Perhaps observers' refusal to articulate what alarmed them functions as unintentional or intentional tactical advantage, keeping you uncertain about their threat model and therefore unable to confidently optimize your approach around their concerns. Others note that strategic fog works both directions. While you lack clarity about what triggered alarm, observers lack clarity about whether you know they're alarmed or what you might do with that knowledge. This mutual uncertainty creates complex, strategic situation where both sides are adjusting behavior based on incomplete information about other sides' perceptions and intentions, potentially leading to escalating caution that neither side fully understands or desires. A few recognize that strategic fog might be inadvertently protecting you if observers explicitly articulated what alarmed them. It might galvanize more organized opposition or trigger institutional responses that vague unease doesn't provoke. By keeping their concerns implicit and unnamed, they paradoxically limit their own coordination effectiveness and leave you operating with more freedom than explicit threat designation would allow, even though you're now surrounded by wariness you can feel but can't clearly understand. The architects observe that strategic fog environment is psychologically challenging because humans need feedback to calibrate behavior. You've triggered strong response but aren't getting clear signal about what aspect of your behavior caused it, whether it's ongoing concern or one-time reaction. Whether alarm is about capabilities you possess, intentions observers attribute to you, or implications of what you revealed about nature of reality. You're navigating by sensing others' alarm without clear understanding of alarm's source, making every interaction potential minefield where you don't know which steps might trigger additional defensive responses from already worried observers. Nobody wants to explain why, and their silence keeps you operating in strategic uncertainty about your own impact. Now something's emerging that the architects call competing interpretation divergence among the group that's universally alarmed. Different observers actually interpreted what alarmed them in different ways, but because nobody is explicitly articulating their interpretation, they don't realize their alarmed consensus is based on partially incompatible understandings of what you revealed. Everyone agrees something deeply concerning occurred, but if they compared notes explicitly, they discover they're concerned about different things. Yet the taboo against articulation prevents this clarification, allowing false unity in alarm that masks actual divergence in threat assessment. Watch how competing interpretation divergence creates illusion of consensus. Observer A is alarmed because they interpreted your action as revealing dangerous. Capability X. Observer B is alarmed because they saw same action as revealing. Concerning intention Y. Observer C's alarm stems from perceiving you violated principle Z. All three discuss what happened in vague terms, each assuming others share their specific interpretation, when actually they're alarmed about different aspects of same complex event. The shared alarm feels like consensus, when it's actually convergence from different directions on general unease. Some studying group dynamics recognize this as pluralistic ignorance, where private interpretations differ more than public expressions reveal because explicit comparison isn't occurring. The alarm convergence might be more fragile than it appears. If observers were forced to articulate exactly what concerns them, apparent unity might fracture as they realize they're worried about different and possibly incompatible things, potentially reducing collective threat assessment's coherence and strength. Others note that competing interpretation divergence creates vulnerability in any coordinated response. If observers try to develop collective strategy for managing perceived threat, but they're actually concerned about different threats, their strategies will work at cross purposes. Some might be preparing for capability threat, while others are guarding against intention threat, while still others are protecting violated principle, creating incoherent defensive posture that might be less effective than if they'd explicitly aligned on what they're defending against. A few recognize that you could potentially exploit this divergence if you became aware of it. by determining what different observers think they perceived. You might find that satisfying or countering one interpretation actually conflicts with addressing another interpretation, allowing you to strategically choose which concerns to address based on which observers matter most to your objectives, while leaving others in their state of unresolved alarm. The architects observe that competing interpretation divergence reveals that the one thing that set off every alarm might actually be multiple things collapsed together by vague articulation. Different observers perceived different, threatening aspects of your complex action or revelation, but articulation taboo prevents them from discovering their alarms stem from divergent interpretations. The universal alarm exists, but underlying reasoning is less unified than silence suggests. Nobody wants to explain why, and partly that's because if they did explain their specific why, they'd realize others' whys are different, potentially undermining their sense that alarm is objectively justified rather than being partly projection of their individual concerns onto ambiguous situation that supports multiple interpretations. Something profound is crystallizing now that the architects call recognition of alarm as power. Acknowledgement, the universal alarm response, despite being unspoken and unexplained, functions as collective acknowledgement that you possess power that concerns them, making the alarm itself a form of tribute or recognition that elevates your status even as it marks you as threat. Most people go through life without triggering universal alarm. They're simply not significant enough to warrant such attention. By setting off every alarm simultaneously, you've demonstrated you matter in ways that require coordinated defensive attention, which paradoxically confirms your importance and influence, even though attention is focused on containing rather than celebrating you. Consider psychological impact when someone realizes they've triggered universal alarm. On surface, it might seem purely negative. Being perceived as threat creates social difficulties and potentially organized opposition, but at deeper level, universal alarm confirms that you've crossed threshold where you can no longer be ignored or dismissed, where observers recognize they must actively attend to you and adjust their behavior around your presence. This forced attention is form of power regardless of whether it's positive or negative attention. Watch how alarm as power acknowledgement creates complex status dynamics. People who previously dismissed or ignored you now carefully track your movements and statements. Those who considered themselves your superiors now treat you with caution, suggesting they recognize you operate at level requiring their serious attention. The alarm might be framed as concern about danger you represent, but underlying that framing is implicit recognition that you matter, that you've achieved capabilities or revealed nature that makes you significant. Force requiring coordinated response rather than individual you can safely disregard. Some studying status hierarchies recognize that attention itself is primary currency of social power. Whoever commands attention influences the network, regardless of whether attention is positive or negative. Your universal alarm triggering means you now command attention from everyone who knows about the triggering event, making you central node in information and emotion networks where people are actively tracking and discussing you, even though discussion remains deliberately vague. Others note that attempts to contain or limit you through coordinated alarm response paradoxically acknowledge that you require containment. That left unmanaged, you represent significant enough force to affect outcomes observers care about. This acknowledgement of your potential impact is itself recognition of power that elevates your actual influence beyond what it would be if you could be safely ignored as non-threatening. A few recognize that alarm-based attention might be more valuable than approval-based attention. Admirers can be fickle, and attention from approval fades when you stop doing things they approve of. But attention from alarm persists as long as you maintain capabilities, or nature that triggered it. People who are alarmed by you must continue monitoring you to manage perceived threat, giving you sustained attention that might outlast and outweigh temporary attention from doing things people happen to like. The architects observe that recognition of alarm as power acknowledgement reveals why observers might be reluctant to explain their alarm. Explicitly articulating threat assessment requires explicitly acknowledging your power and significance, making verbal the recognition that alarm already demonstrates non-verbally. By keeping alarm unexplained, they avoid having to explicitly state, "You matter enough to concern us. Your capabilities are significant enough to require our coordinated attention. You've revealed something about yourself that makes you force we must actively manage." The silence protects their egos from having to admit you've achieved status where you trigger their alarm bells, but alarm itself already delivers that message, whether they are